happens, if the first scenario happens and Iran strikes out at the United States in retaliation, something that Iran has vowed to do, that Donald Trump is prepared to escalate this. So where are we in terms of his promises of ending forever wars? Under one scenario, this is a beginning, not an end, to our conflict with Iran.
It certainly has reshaped the Middle East and what it looks like, in the weeks and months from now. Obviously, we cannot say at this point, though, a significant move tonight on the part of the U.S. military at the instruction of the president to strike 3 major nuclear facilities inside Iran. And again, of course, Fordo is the one many of our viewers are familiar with, the most reporting on it because it's deep underground. John, stick with us. Again, John speaking to President Trump before he addressed the nation, the president expressing to John that he was very pleased with what he saw played out, said it was tremendous a success, and then addressing the nation 10 p.m. Eastern, speaking of these 3 facilities. I do want to bring in Martha Raddatz back with us this half hour. And Martha, the question going into tonight and this operation, he said there was a 2-week timeline. It turned out to be 2 days. Of course, we'll report this out, whether or not that was part of the strategy here. The question was, B-2 bombers, would they be used? We know they were. We know they flew all the way or halfway around the world to get to the Iranian airspace. And we presume that they did use those 30,000-pound bombs. They would have to reach deep beneath that mountain there in Iran.
That's exactly right, David. They would almost have to have used those massive ordnance penetrators that can go so deeply into that mountainside. That's what Israel was waiting for. That's what Israel wanted to go over Fordo, because it really, truly is the only bomb that could penetrate that deeply. I think one of the things that will have to be checked clearly is that the president clearly said this was a tremendous success. They destroyed it. Whether they can get people on the ground to see if it is completely destroyed, because an underground facility, you can't really tell, although they
That's right, BB.
Find out as much as
no
possible.
new wars. There'll
But
be
I
no
think
more
one
wars
thing
after
tonight,
this
David,
for sure.
that we really do have to say, it is clear the U.S. is now at war. It is exactly what we've been talking about all evening, that this is what the president wanted to avoid, but we are now there. And as we brace for possible retaliation,
Yeah, I can't
certainly
believe
Iran
this. Well, I mean, I guess I
has
can,
suffered
but
great loss,
just handled
but
so
they are
stupidly.
perfectly.
The fact that he said that he was going to give him 2 weeks. Yeah, he was going to give him 2 weeks. And he didn't even give him 2 days. Yeah, it's weird too that the Chiron here, U.S. conducts successful attack. I mean, they're putting Trump saying this, but they don't even know, the extent to what they did so far. So, but yeah, it's totally messed up. Totally unexpected. I mean, I knew that he was bungling when he said that I may do it, I may not, but it's clear that he has no control over what's happening here, because this seems completely impulsive. It doesn't seem strategic in any way at all. The fact that he would just talk to the press about not knowing anything and then say they got 2 weeks, and then, yeah, it's terrible. And the tweet that I saw today was, let's pull it up here. Or no, it wasn't a tweet. Axios. Trump says, Israel is now much safer. That's absolutely insane that he would actually try to convince us of that, because now he's just raised animosities in the region more so. I mean, Israel was already not popular there, but yeah, I think it is the Trump always chickens out thing. I think that got to him. So yeah, and it's like the way it's like, so if people think this is what diplomacy looks like, it's something else. Anybody who supports this kind of unhinged, like we've done this kind of strike before, I believe, like Libya, like I think Reagan did something similar. I don't think it was about nuclear facilities, but the way Trump is doing it just seems totally bizarre. Just Yeah, it's like it's so gross that he acted like they had a chance for some sort of, agreement, like they were going to come back to the table, and clearly that wasn't an option. I wonder who exactly advised him to do this, because he seemed like he was vacillating on it. Like every time people talked to him, he just seemed like he was not sure of what he was going to do. It didn't come across as like, I've got a plan and I'm not sharing it with you. It came across as, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. So
the White House was in touch with them before.
Percent of the world's oil supplies go through the Straits of Hormuz. We saw previously that the Houthi
because the whole thing was
rebels
he wanted them
inside
just to
Yemen were capable of striking.
he wanted them to agree to the same exact thing that Obama had,
That is a group specifically that
which
I think
is-
we should be watching. That will have an impact on oil prices. And the
I don't
US
know what happens
doesn't
here.
depend
It's
on oil from that region
totally
in
messed
the
up.
same way that the Europeans and the Chinese do, for sure. But it will have a potential knock-on effect. So there are a number of ways that Iran could retaliate. But the president was very clear. We shouldn't lose track of that. That if Iran didn't acquiesce, that if it didn't sign up to some kind of peace process, there would be further action.
Ian, you and I both know that the president certainly has not talked about a regime change in any sort of way, and certainly didn't tonight.
That's
in
the
addressing American
other
people.
awful
Instead,
thing here is
obviously
that they
talking about
have
the desire to,
no
as he
idea.
said,
They've got
we're completely,
nobody
totally obliterated.
to fill
We
in.
talked about Fordo,
They've got
Natanz,
they've
Esfahan, these
got
three
nobody
nuclear
who's
sites in
capable of
Iran. But you
managing a
can't help but
coalition
think about
in
the
Iran.
future of the current
And
leadership
they're
of Iran,
trying
and in
to
particular,
take
the
out.
Supreme Leader, who the president has talked
They're
about
trying to
in
take out
recent days.
Khomeini, and they got
Obviously,
nobody to
too
replace
early
him,
to know,
and they're
but
just going to create a,
the future
another. If anybody who remembers Afghanistan, they had so many people they were trying, like it just run by. Iran is very different, but they didn't. And the same thing in like Afghanistan, they didn't have anybody prepped to take the position, so everybody they'd put in there basically ended up, getting assassinated or whatever, and it's just so thoughtless. I didn't know about the Japanese trade negotiations thing. Was that what made Trump angry? Because it seems impulsive. Let's look at here.
Apart from once or twice, that raises questions in people's minds. The regime lives and dies on its ability to project strength and actual physical coercive force on the ground, and that has been diminished. It has been suggested to us that the
Yep.
going after military targets could go after state security targets. If those forces are no longer powerful, then it may well lead to further action. Certainly,
He's so incompetent. I can't believe it. It's like such a depressing state of the world. Like, just
capacity for self-generated change has now just gone up dramatically.
Okay, so Ian,
and I guess the media is just gonna, they love this sort of thing. This is like exactly what they did in the first Gulf War. Was they would show the footage of all of the weapons they were using against. It was like a commercial for the defense industry. They would just show the bombs going down, the chutes and whatnot, and blowing up stuff. We haven't seen that yet, but maybe we'll get that too. I wonder what the defense stocks are probably all through the roof too now. This country is just. You think it's all the Epstein files? I don't know. I mean, it just it doesn't make any sense at all, because Iran was not being aggressive at all. I think Bibi just had the plan to what is going on here? Oh, I'm looking at this chat for the ABC News, and it looks like it's my chat. I'm like, well, where are all these people? It's just Bibi. It's just me and you, Bibi. Yeah, it's just, it's a crazy way to deflect, but I don't even know if it was that popular. I don't even know if people were even paying attention. I think everybody already knew. So, hey, Chaw, how's it going? I'm still thinking about my soothing voice right now, and I think we all need a soothing voice right now. I wish it wasn't my own, but I guess Cha, you in Manitoba too? I think it was you and BB and Von Krull. We got a little close community here.
Of course, you say, Pierre, that what authorities within the administration are most concerned about at this point, and at this point we point out it's very early in this sort of new chapter we're in, potential window of time.
I totally wasn't. I mean, I thought he was going to do something unhinged, but I wasn't expecting it. Like when he said, we're going to give him 2 weeks, it just seemed like he was saying that to kind of see if the situation resolved himself. And I thought he was just going to wait and see if it resolved itself or see if something else happened. The fact that he just did this Alberta, huh? Hey, AB. It's good to see you. I didn't really have anything planned this week. I've been kind of working on household projects, so I didn't have anything planned for tomorrow. So I thought that I would just pop in here and see what's going on with the news, see how Trump is handling this. You think Trump was planning to attack Iran all along? I don't know. I don't know. There are people who say they're always going to change the narrative of what he did to make him seem smart. You know, they want to make it sound like everything he does is strategic genius, like him saying, I'm not going to tell you whether I'm going to attack or not. What the fuck was Iran supposed to do under these situations if you don't make it clear what's expected of them? I mean, it was made it clear by the international community what was expected of them, and the fact that he just behaved this way, I think that's like he's governing like a complete madman. Like, I guess nobody will the world's going to become like the Republican Party. Nobody's going to push back against him. You think he's big? I think, yeah, I think that on some level he's just following BB for some reason. I don't know if it's part of his base. It doesn't make sense because it's not a popular position for him to take. You know, there's a lot of people who on his side that didn't want to see it. Yeah, maybe he just wants BB to like him. You know, he does everything to get people to praise him and think he's great. He's so easily manipulated. That's right. Oh yeah, I saw the Tucker Carlson thing with Ted Cruz and Tucker doing serious journalism for once. But yeah, he said we are going to do this. So.
I do want to mention the statement that's been released by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. Obviously, video statement. He congratulated President Trump for his, quote, bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities. The United States, Netanyahu said, has done what no other country on earth could do.
I don't know if other people feel the same way about it, but I don't like the vagueness of the way they just describe. The media just describes these as nuclear facilities, you know, and they leave it up in the air like what exactly is going on, like just because it gives us a reason, you know, these like, I don't think science bombing science centers is necessarily a great way to handle the situation. And they're just saying it's just like before when they said that they had yellow cake and Iraq was doing all these crazy things. They had the aluminum tubes. So yeah, he went back and said that
world's most dangerous regime.
Who was it?
Most dangerous weapons, and as you heard
Tulsi
Rachel say,
Gabbard.
you heard other correspondents
she said that
But this
they
was
were
exactly what
they were
Benjamin
trying to be
Netanyahu
good
had
faith
been hoping
actors,
for.
and
Retired Colonel
he
Steve
said he didn't care.
Ganyard again with
The other
us.
thing that's
Steve, you and I
interesting
have been
is
talking
that
about US military
somebody pointed out that
capability,
all of the people
and
who were
regardless of where people stand on this
talking,
politically,
who were against
this
this
was a
are
significant
kind
use
of like
force tonight. It's
suspected of being
something
Russian
that has
assets, like
long
Tucker
been studied by
Carlson
not only this
and Tulsi
administration, but
Gabbard.
administrations before it. President
There was
Trump,
another one.
the
Who was
president
the
who
other
has
one?
decided to move forward with this.
But
in a
there was
key moment
speculation
when
that they're
air
basically
defenses were
trying to
significantly weakened in the skies over
help
Iran, Israel, essentially
Iran's interest, because
controlling
Iran
those skies
and
as U.S. B-2 bombers flew in tonight.
Iran and Russia are kind of allies, but Russia's not in any position to do anything right now. That's probably why Bibi decided to do it now. Partly because if something happens in Trump's, if the Democrats take the House, which like probably a real possibility now of political change at the midterms that Trump did this, because he's going to lose some of his support. There's no way this is going to turn out well for him. So we might see that at the midterms. And I think Bibi wanted to get this in when he could, because he knew that if there was some kind of significant change in government leadership here, that he wasn't going to be able to do it. So he had to seize the moment. Yeah, and what was it, Colin Powell? He basically ruined his whole career by buying into that. Colin Powell was always kind of like more of a centrist player in the Bush administration, and he just basically destroyed his legacy by saying that they were
massive ordnance penetrator bombs. As you know, that's the long
trying to purchase yellow cake or whatever it was. And then of course you had Dick Cheney say that we had to act on Iraq because we didn't want to see the results of this in the form of a mushroom cloud. And it's nuts that Trump is like been critical of Bush and Cheney, and this is like even more unhinged, than the plan, because they had the plan for, what was it, look this up, like Bill Kristol and everybody, they had this plan on order for, I think it was for Iraq, but I don't know if they had anything similar like right now. I don't think they had something similar to this, but in Iraq, was it the plan for something prosperity? Let's see if I can find it. Spelled it wrong. I don't remember who it was, but they had it totally is the that era, Jaw. It feels like that, but like I said, it was even, at least with that, they had this, who was it, like it was Rumsfeld. There was another guy, Wolfowitz. Let's see, what was I can't remember that. They had a plan worked out. They had this plan that they had been hashing out in behind the scenes for decades to invade either Iraq or Afghanistan, and they just needed an event that would allow them to do it, and that was 9/11. They basically said that was the cause for this. So, but they don't have that this time. This just seems totally, refrigerated trucks driving through the desert as evidence. Yeah, that was I remember that too. It just like, and the thing that really gets me is like, I'm gonna be straight here. I voted for Ralph Nader in 2000, but in 2004 I was like, people were saying like the same thing. Ralph Nader was going to run again, and they were saying don't do it because Ralph Nader was always of the opinion that both parties are the same, which, there are some compelling cases for it, but in certain situations you kind of just have to vote for harm reduction. And people were saying that George Bush in 2004, he didn't do enough to fuck up the country, and that they wanted him, like people on the left, they wanted George Bush to have another 4 years so he could fuck up even more, and that there would be a political shift if he was given the chance to really do the full bit of damage. And it just seemed like that didn't happen, so the idea of accelerationism as a means of ending American empire at the cost of hundreds of thousands of lives, to me, does not seem like a great trade. And I think we're going to see that now. There were a lot of people who said that Kamala was not enough different on these issues, and they didn't want to vote for her for that, and they're hoping for accelerationism. And I don't, if this is what acceleration looks like, I don't know. Because the thing is, the American empire is already in decline. We didn't need Trump to get in there and just run it into the toilet, because it's just going to create far more headaches. So, yeah, it was. Obama had there were points in time where he had the ability to do stuff, and basically because he was under advisement from Geithner and who was the other dude, Lawrence Summers. He was under advisement of all these neoliberals who basically wanted to, extend the neoliberal plan that had been going on since Reagan and Clinton. So we didn't really. I mean, we barely got Obamacare, which sucks, but we barely got that. That was the only thing I think we got out of the deal, because Obama's policies were not that much differentiated from Bush in terms of drone strikes and all these other things. He seemed not great on those issues. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like that. I mean, every empire is just not capable of sustaining itself, especially because I think what happens is you have the people at the top of the empire. They just start really taking more and more of things, and the system becomes so, the inequality between the classes is so unmanageable at that point that they can no longer maintain any sort of sense of comfort among the citizens. Like, the famous "they need bread in circuses" quote. Roman speaker, can't remember who said it, but I guess this is supposed to be a circus. Trump is supposed to be a circus, but did he already address? I'd like to hear what he has to say. Yeah, the Obamacare thing was disheartening. It really shows, and like the furtherance of it by Nancy Pelosi, who didn't. I mean, I guess she's not really running the show anymore, but she didn't want single payer either. So, President, he's gonna come out here
outside the White House tonight. And Mary, the president said he would give Iran 2 weeks
until it comes out. This reminds me of, here he comes. This reminds me of when he killed Soleimani, and he's like, he died like a dog, and he's going to say something else gross like that again, I think.
National security team earlier today at the White House. Let's listen to the president.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can
always
report to the
disagree with that.
world
The CIA
that
is the
the
world's
strikes
#1
were a
sponsor of terror.
spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace.
This
If
is
they
like
do not,
some
future
serious
attacks will be
deflection
far
that they're
greater
calling
and
Iran
a
the
lot
bully,
easier.
considering
For 40
the
years,
actions
Iran
of
has been
Israel
saying
over the
death
past
to
2
America,
years.
Death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American
This is like a
patriots who
television
flew those
acceptance speech.
magnificent
Like he won the
machines tonight,
Oscar or something.
and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace
JD's
or
face.
there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left.
These guys don't look
Tonight's
very
was
confident.
the most
If you look
difficult
at
of them all
Rubio
by
and
far,
Vance.
and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military.
We love you,
Protect them.
God.
God
The
bless
fuck?
the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
We love you, God. We
President
love you,
Trump
God.
there at the White
That's
House,
so
Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary.
classy. I guess you're just supposed to
Serving
say
as his
God
national
bless
security-
America. We love you, God. Yeah, they didn't look like confident. Trump always, he doesn't, I don't know if he strikes me as confident, but he looked different than the other three of them. J.D. Vance's face read very, let's look at that again. He looked very, look at the furrow on his eyes there. He does not look like he's certain. He's got a lack of certainty right here. Rubio just looks like he's a deer in headlights. And I get Pete shifting his eyes across. He doesn't look confident either. I think they fucked up. So, how Trump? Are you talking about Trump, baby? I think I don't know why. I'm just gonna. My brain is racing to something else right now. Well, anyways, I don't. It's like when you think that things can't get any worse. You know, we had the terrible events in Los Angeles, and now we got this. And I guess the thing is, like, he had to pull back on the ICE thing because so many business leaders were complaining that they're using undocumented labor, that they were. And I'm assuming that anybody who uses undocumented labor is a Trump supporter, but I could be wrong about that. Yeah, it's always strange when people invoke God for, I guess they invoke kind of like the Old Testament God is how they view it. It's definitely not New Testament Jesus. Hey, David O and Thomas, good to see you. David and Thomas, I was going to stream tomorrow, but I didn't have any material, so I thought that I'd pull a few strings and get Trump to bomb Iran, so I'd have something to talk about. It's good to see your text there, Thomas, and I can set up if anybody wants to, talk about what's going on. We can set it up on the Discord. If you log in, I can probably get in that channel and we can open it up to me just rambling. Yeah, this is not good. It's not good at all. And I know it, like, kind of the reason I felt streaming, I know a lot of Iranian people. They're kind of close to a lot of them here. They probably hang out with more Iranian people than anybody else in terms of my weekly existence. And I know that they're nothing like the way that they're described by Trump. And it's always so offensive when he says, when he describes Iran. Anytime you describe a group of people as a monolith, it's always terrible. And it's always the people who are at the bottom who suffer, because wealthy Iranians got out of Iran. Wealthy Iranians were able to evacuate the city, but it's the people who don't have money who always bear the brunt of the bigotry and the racism. Yeah, and that's the thing, is I think that the issue with a lot of conservative people is they don't have broad experience. If you look at a lot of them, they're in the rural areas, and so their experience is only with their own kind. They're always afraid of anyone who has a different culture than them. Thomas, I think we talked about this before. I had an anthropology class with a professor who was one of the last people to live among the people in the Papua New Guinea in the Hewa, and he this is like in the 60s, I think, or the 50s. I can't even remember when he did this work, but he went and he was going to live with these people, and when he was heading out there, everybody in Papua New Guinea in the urban areas would tell him, "Oh, you don't want to go there. Those people are cannibals. They're going to you're going to get eaten." And he's like, I don't believe that, because like his whole central thesis was that cannibalism is not actually a phenomenon that ever exists. That even we're so ingrained not to eat other people that you wouldn't even eat another. It happens as an anomaly. Somebody will do something disgusting, but it's so aversive to like our very core that even other cultures won't eat other human beings. So he wanted to go to the Hewa and do some work and see if they actually were eating people. So the people in the urban area, when they were going to take him out to the fore, they said, "You don't want to go there. They're going to eat you. You're going to die." And so he says, "No." He goes there and he lives with them for a year or something like that. And he never sees any evidence of them eating other people. But they do tell him that there is a tribe over the hill that does eat people. So they were calling the other group of people cannibals. And he's like, "Well, I want to go check those people out. I want to see how those people are doing. And I want to actually see human beings get eaten." And they're like, "No, the Hewa were telling him, no, those are real cannibals. People say we're cannibals, but we're not cannibals. It's the people over the hill." And so he convinces like one guy to take him over there and show him where they live. And the guy's really scared, runs off after he sends him off. He goes and talks to this other tribe of people. And eventually he's talking to them and he starts asking them about, what's going on and inquiring about their cannibalism. And they said, "No, we're not the cannibals. It's the tribe that you were just at. Those are the people who eat other people." The moral of the story is that human beings use these terms, these like behaviors that are anathema. We use pedophilia, we use incest, we use cannibalism to dehumanize other people in other tribes that we want to, that we're either competing with for resources or whatnot. So, yeah, Thomas, we talked a little bit about that before, about Papua New Guinea, and that's why I brought up the story. I think I've told the story before, but it really, that story has really stuck with me, because anytime I hear like a Christian or a right-winger say something about another culture, it always reminds me of this unfamiliarity that they have with other cultures and the way that they dehumanize and say terrible things about them as a means of being able to kill them. If there's another culture and they're people who are pedophiles, it's okay to kill them. Or if they're people who say death to America, it's okay to kill them. But the thing is that we don't bother to understand their perspective at all. We don't understand nobody understands it. Most Americans don't know the history of American and British imperialism in Iran that kind of led to the Iranian Revolution. And it was basically, unlike in Latin America, we get these revolutions that are kind of rooted in liberation theology, like Catholic liberation theology, and the idea that the poor people are oppressed because the Catholic Church was there for so long. But in Iran, the Catholic Church has no influence there, so it's going to be more its religion's going to be used in a similar way. But Anyways, I'm just looking at this B-2 bomber thing or whatever it is. Zaffinity says, kind of understandable. I've never interacted with any immigrant in any meaningful way. You go by what others are saying. If the lattice voices are saying that that's it. Like in my experience, like Arizona is like a weird, I live in Arizona if people don't know. And Arizona is a weirdly libertarian crossed with conservatism. But it's very white, but there are immigrant communities growing, over the past few decades, but historically it was, I don't know if I'd say largely Mormon, but some of the suburbs were, settled by Mormon settlers. So it's very white, very insulated, very conservative. And, these people just don't have broader experiences with, immigrant communities, but like the nicest people around here are the Guatemalans and the people, the Venezuelans. Those people, they're never messing with your stuff because they don't want to get arrested. They're always looking to, if you need help around your house, they're always looking to help out. And it sucks that we're basically chasing these people off, making them scared. I always think it's weird that we have so much that people, when you talk about like animals, like wild horses or feral cats, that people have so much, there are people who get so worked up about saving these creatures, but when it comes to their fellow human beings, these same people have zero empathy, zero compassion for their fellow human beings. Yep. That's right, Thomas. It's always the other people. There's always a boogeyman. Yeah, if you know an Iranian who like, I know a person who like graduated from Tehran University, and he's a great guy. He's very well read. He and I have conversations about classic literature. Like he loves The Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. The Stranger by Camus. He's read these things, and he's a very caring person. And he came to America to be a doctor, and he's seen, like, it sucks. During the Gulf War, he's been a doctor here in Phoenix since like the 70s. But during the Gulf War, people threw trash cans through his office and said, "Arabs go home," or whatever. And he's not an Arab. He's not even like a religious person. Most of the Iranians that are here, they may say that they're Shia or whatever, but they're not religious in the way that like these right wing Christians are. Their religion is like a secondary thing. Their primary thing is they love American capitalism. That's the thing that they love. Let's see. AB says fear is an extremely powerful motivator, and it doesn't rely on truth. Yeah, I guess you're fearful of things that you're just uncertain of. There's no truth. I mean, I guess sometimes there's going to be some truth about something you should be afraid of. Like I'm afraid of pit bulls. There's some truth there. But in general, not knowing, I think it's a lack of understanding that creates the fear. It's a lack of understanding that human beings are basically more similar than they are different, that there's still this notion that people have that some human beings are more evil than others. We've got this kind of antiquated view of morality, rather than understanding that circumstances are what create bad behaviors. Like if you're in a bad environment, everybody will have to resort to bad behavior. If you're in a war zone or a shitty area, you're bound to do some things that are not going to look great on your moral report card. But if you're in a good environment, if you have plenty of resources, you're not going to be a bad person. So people confuse bad environmental conditions that create undesirable behaviors with evil. And it's a problem, I think, is that, especially in America, because we're so simplistic here, we have such a lack of understanding of pretty much everything. We don't even know history. We don't know humanities. We have like a disconnect from everything. Thomas says, they remind me of the people who lived under communism in the USSR. They did oppose the bureaucracy, but their heads weren't filled with... Yeah, exactly. Like, the Russians, by and large, were just working class people. And the bulk of them were not people who were like, would turn you in if you weren't a communist, if you weren't a member of the Communist Party. Basically, that was the government were the ones doing that. It wasn't actually the little people. The little people always are the ones that get screwed. Yeah, Thomas. If I'm still on here rambling, it would be nice to have somebody else to talk to. Bob Almighty says no one respects America anymore. Yeah, I mean it's what is there to respect? Our behavior is reprehensible at this point. I mean it's been bad for a long, long time, and it seems like it's just getting worse and worse and worse. But what's happening here is like you can go back not centuries but decades to American foreign policy of us meddling in other countries. One of the things that radicalized me was learning about Salvador Allende in Chile. And he was a doctor, he was a man of the people, and he basically was going to nationalize their oil reserves. I think it was their oil reserves. And the CIA went in there and assassinated the guy. So we've been doing this sort of thing for a long time. It was easier, I guess, back in the day. Now, I think warfare is more asymmetrical. So the idea that Trump thinks he's going to go in there and assassinate the supreme leader is kind of farcical. He's just going to create a situation where he's just going to accelerate asymmetrical warfare in the region, which was going on, with the Houthis and these in Yemen and all these other places. It was already happening. Now it's just a radicalizing factor. You're going to have this magnified because Iran was basically funding Hezbollah in the similar way that we put money into the CIA and we fund insurgencies elsewhere. They were basically funding people who were working towards their interests. And it's hard for America to call these people out on that sort of thing when that's like, we basically set the bar for that kind of behavior. We're like the global leaders in terms of that sort of behavior. Zaffinity says, can confirm I live in Europe and people who travel to the U.S. for work conferences are shameful about it. Anyone positive in America is socially shunned by the majority. Yeah, and it's going to be worse because I think the entire European community had a largely working relationship with Iran. Even like the UK had a better relationship. They had you could fly from the UK and travel between the two countries, fairly easily. But now the United States is going to be a pariah state just because of the fact that if we were aligning ourselves with Israel is just nuts. I mean, we've always aligned, but after Israel's bad behavior, the fact that we would double down and say, the genocide you committed wasn't our tacit support for your genocide and our supplying of the weapons to allow children to be maimed and women to be killed and people to be starved wasn't enough. Now we want to go all in on making the rest of the region hate us. And the thing that really gets me is how they refer to Iran as the aggressor in this. Like, Iran has done nothing overt. It's all covert behavior, which every fucking state does, or every country engages in this kind of covert behavior. But because Trump just wants to be loved, he's willing to. I think he thinks there's enough people. That's why he's keeps bringing up that Iran chanting death to America, which is like a thing I'm sure it happens on occasion, but it was largely a thing that was happening after the Iranian Revolution. That's where that phrase came from. But like, I think it was after, what was it? Just recently, there was an event, and the Iranians were at like a soccer game or whatever, and they were cheering for the Americans. And Iranians fucking love America. It's so stupid that this narrative has been pushed by this administration. Every Iranian wants to come over here and start up a business. Just like like throughout the world, you have people like that. I'm rambling. Yeah, I don't know what to do about that. The fact that Trump and Elon, they were going to cut the budget and everything, but they didn't touch the defense budget. That's always been. And if you think about it, like, what are we going to do? This whole country is set up on, the military industrial complex. I bet everybody here probably knows somebody who in some capacity does work for the military industrial complex. That's right, Bob. Bob Almighty says Iranian friends are the kindest, most welcoming people. They want to be like America. Well, minus Trump, of course, yeah. And they're it's a really modernized country. I mean, this is going to set it back. Like Lebanon. Do you like what happened in Lebanon? They basically want to turn Iran into Lebanon. They basically, Beirut used to be super modernized. It was always referred to as the Paris of the West. And then, the Warhawks basically did what Warhawks do, and Lebanon now is like a shadow of its former self. And David, you work for them. Exactly. Like we had somebody in our family who was like a vice president at a major defense contractor, and I was actually really relieved. I mean, he left my sister for another woman, but it was actually kind of a relief, because I always had to bite my tongue about how I didn't approve of all the blood money that funded my sister's family's well-being. But they got a divorce, so now I can talk shit about him. Let's see. Liam says, they added to the defense budget. We're about to find out what it's like to be an isolated superpower like Russia or China. China's actually doing pretty good, though. I mean, China, they know, they're doing some bad things, but they're actually doing, the statecraft of China is superior to what we do. I mean, they learned the lessons of capitalism and colonialism, and they're kind of combining them together. So like, they build infrastructure in other countries, but then they saddle those other countries with the debt for building the infrastructure, just like total capitalists would do. But they're not doing the things that we do. They don't go in there and build, a green zone and just alienate the entire culture around them. They don't build military bases. And the thing that always struck me is like one of the things. Let's look at this this list that comes up from time to time. Let's look up Osama bin Laden grievances. What was his grievances? Let's see here. There was a list. I think it's under. Like, if you look at like a lot of what Osama bin Laden was complaining about, you can kind of relate to it. One of the principles that he was really bothered with was all the military bases throughout, his land. And who would like that? Who would like to have another country have a military base where they're not integrated in the community whatsoever, and they're just locked off, and their whole goal there is to occupy you and to control it. We don't even like our own government. So the fact that we would accept another government coming in and setting up shop is just insane. And so anyways, I was trying to get myself canceled by saying that most of Osama bin Laden's grievances were fairly legitimate. Like, one of his big thing was Palestine, which he was on the right page of that. Let's see. Osama bin Laden apparently had favorable opinion of Noam Chomsky and Michael Schur. So Yeah, and like my partner, she's always telling me like I'm kind of an Anglophile. I have a kind of an appreciation for the UK culture because partly because I was propagandized in college about how great the Enlightenment philosophers were. So I have a very high opinion of of the UK in that regard. But she's like, they're the ones that fucked up the entire world with all these boundaries. If you look at every conflict in the world, it's largely where the British drew the lines between ethnic communities, like in Kashmir, between India and Pakistan, all the lines in the Middle East, between Iraq and Iran. So, anywho, let's see if there's anything else going on here with. I do not like this Chiron. I feel like this Chiron is, if you can see it, even though it says Trump with a colon, I feel like this Chiron is manufacturing consent for us. U.S. conducts successful attack on Iranian nuclear sites. And again, I don't like the vagueness of nuclear sites because pretty much anything can be a nuclear site. If you're doing, if you're irradiating somebody's, if you're irradiating their part of their body, their prostate or whatever, to conduct medical treatment, that's a nuclear site in my book. Oh, you want to chat here, Thomas? I think you can just pop in. Let me pop into the Discord here too. So I'm gonna pop into on the Discord. If I go into terminal mode, let's see here, voice channel, and anybody else, if you want to pop in here, hopefully you'll have to again just focus on the Discord. You'll have to mute YouTube because there'll be a delay. But if you just want to pop in there, Tom, I think, unless you want to be on camera, that's okay. You can do that too. Whatever's easiest. Yeah, that's the thing is like, it also seems reckless because if they do have any sort of nuclear capacity like is alleged, you would think that blowing up a site that has some kind of nuclear material would be dangerous. But I'm guessing that they don't. So then why are we attacking these facilities? Cha, the Discord. Let's see here. Where's the Discord? Let me find my Discord link here. All right. Discord invite. I like having Tomcat join because he's from down under, and it gives this little live stream an international flair when he joins. Discord, terminal mode, invite people. I gotta turn off 1 second, Chaw. Are you here, Thomas?
Oh, hey. So, am I
Can't
already
hear you.
online?
Maybe my settings are not right. 1 second. John, I'm gonna fix my Discord thing so I can hear Thomas. Hold on 1 second, Thomas.
Sure.
I got my speakers not set right. And then Cha, I'll give you this invite. I still don't. I'm testing. It says that I'm set up right, but I don't hear you, Thomas.
Oh, you can't hear me at all?
Probably on my end. Let me try to give you. I'm going to give Cha this invite here, and then I will. Boy, I'm totally confused. Too many windows as always. There's the Discord. Thomas, let's try this other thing because I'm not sure.
Sure.
I don't know why I can't hear myself on Discord. You can hear him? I can't. Weird. I'm going to have to... Oh. Why can't I hear? I want to hear too.
Okay, people who are on the YouTube chat now, please just tell Terminal Mode that I'll hop off this and then let him work out any solution, and he can tell us through the show
I don't know. I don't know
what
how to
the
do
next
it.
step would be.
It
I'll
says I'm on
leave
the
you to
right
it.
setting,
Thanks.
but I can't. And now he's gone. Well. Let me see here.
Hey, I just thought I'll try to hang up and
I
try
have
again,
no
see if
idea
it
why.
works.
I can see you talking, but I cannot hear you. I see the little green light, but for some reason it's not routed through my... Can you say something now? Oh, I got a terrible link now. That's not going to... That was not good. My technical incompetence is on full display here. Wonder why.
Released, in fact, David, just last month.
I don't get why I can't hear Discord. Maybe I need to reboot Discord. I'm gonna reboot Discord. Yeah, it says that I'm right, but I think maybe let me just reboot my Discord because everything else is working. I can hear. It should just be routed properly. Let's see. Gotta. I'm gonna have to. I don't see my Discord now. Now I don't see Discord at all. Oh, brother. All right, let me try this one more time. All right, back to Discord. Test. So let's, Thomas, if you could go back to Discord, I'm going to try one more thing here. And if not, we'll go to the, it's probably not going to work. My Discord settings look even more messed up. I have some weird fancy USB mixer, and sometimes it just makes things, now it look like I'm not even,
Hey, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Awesome.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. Do I turn on the camera or does it not matter?
If you want to be on camera, I'll put you on camera. It's up to you.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, let me 1 second here.
Hey.
It's good to see you. It's been a while, Tom.
Yeah, because I got this. I actually went back to my old workplace, so yeah, it's been a very busy time for me and a lot of early starts. I got to get up at about 4:30 to get out to a distant place by 6 a.m. So it's been a busy time.
Oh, is traffic at least not terrible at that time?
No, it's good. And the way it works in Sydney, I'm sort of going against the flow of traffic. So I've got this empty sort of freeway ahead of me, and all along the opposite side is all just like a parking lot. Yeah. Hey, yeah, so you know Iranian people, so that's just from when you were a student?
I'm not supposed to disclose too much because my Iranian friends are actually kind of scared. Like right now, bad things have happened to them in the past, and they kind of like at this point they're kind of afraid. At least the ones I'm really close to, some of them, they're afraid that they don't want to be in some kind of registry where they get
no, I can imagine
deported or whatever.
Yeah. We actually have this problem in Australia where foreign governments operate in Australia, gathering intelligence and sometimes harassing especially students. So it happened with Malaysia that they had spy rings that were harassing Malaysian students that were here. It's happened with Chinese students. So I know that that sort of thing happens. I had a funny literal run-in with Iranians about 15 years ago where the brakes failed in my car and I rear-ended a car
Oh,
that was a car full of these Iranian guys that were just students here in Australia. And this woman who was at the pub where the crash happened, she ran out to me and she said, "Oh, well, I can just say that it was all their fault." And I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, yeah, there's also still a lot of racism, and like
yeah.
you said, people consider them Arabs and everything. Like, people have no idea about Iranian culture, and I don't even know much myself, but I know a little, to not just lump them all in with a whole different ethnic group and language group.
Y-
But yeah, no, I'm very sad and disappointed to see what's occurred. And this is what I thought about Trump, last time, like before he got reelected. I thought, I don't think Trump's instincts are to go into another major war, but I think he's weak and easily led, and that he's the sort of person who can be either tricked or pressured into a bad position, and then he'll just do the silly, weak, easily led thing, which is to cower to the pressure of the military-industrial complex.
hmm
And it's just shocking how the CNN and Fox News cheer squad, it just rolls up full strength. It's like a replay of 2003. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember in the original Gulf War, one of the things that like pretty much everything radicalizes me, like events that around me, like when something happens, it always is. I always take it in like a political context. There was a gas station down the street from me when Bush invaded Iran that was run by a Sikh, and right wing guy
Yeah.
went down there and killed him because this guy
Yeah.
he can't differentiate between populations. It's like
No, because he saw a turban. So he's like, oh, well, then that means, brown man
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. So that was like it's terrible, and we don't learn like in America, like especially in a lot of the states, we don't have any kind of multicultural experience. Most of us, we like if you live in the urban coast, maybe you do have experiences with other cultures that have been there for a while, like Chinatown or these other areas. But throughout the United States, the whole middle of it, we're very homogenized and very culturally inept. We don't know the differences between these things. But to our credit, a lot of our politicians don't either. Back in what was it? Bill Kristol during the first Gulf War, he had that famous quote about how it was foolish to believe that the Sunni and the Shia couldn't get along. Even the people, and Bill Kristol was trying to remember what that plan. They had this plan from like the 80s. They were just working on this. It was a
Oh, no, the Project of the New American
that
Century.
was it. That's it. The Project for a New American Century. Yes. They had this laid out that they were going to take whenever opportunity came on. They were going to use this to restructure the Middle East. And the thing that's scary is like those were a bunch of smart dudes, a bunch of people who had been in. They made some dumb decisions, but they weren't people who were outsiders. Whereas like I feel like people in Trump's circle, like the fact that his Secretary of Defense he's the weekend host. He was the weekend host for Fox and Friends. That's like terrifying. It's terrifying that these people.
It is terrifying, but at the same time, I had the very strong sense. So first of all, I want to address what you mentioned there. Of course, the notorious words in that document were, it would need some sort of galvanizing event like a new Pearl Harbor. And as Kyle Kalinske said today, it's amazing that Trump announces an illegal, unprovoked, act of aggression against Iran and ends his tweet with, now's the time for peace. That would be exactly like Hirohito in, 1941. Do Pearl Harbor and then just go, well, yep, now's the time for peace. It's not going to work out. But, the other thing you're saying about outsiders versus insiders, what I got that worries me the most is that Trump, he accumulates this rabble, these like Stephen Miller and Hegseth and, these drunkards that were in his cabinet last time, and just like awful people, like really despicable, awful people. But I noticed that the LA Times withheld their recommendation on how to vote. The Washington Post wouldn't go in either with an opinion. And to me, that was giving me the impression that all the billionaires had basically made a decision that, well, Trump's not fundamentally enough of a threat to us to make it, stop him at all costs. That they basically, I think, decided that their class interests were not sufficiently threatened by Trump to make it worth their while to go all in opposition to his presidency. And I think that included a knowledge that his presidency could include fascist traits, strongly fascist traits, like going to the Marines at the earliest opportunity in LA and, firing upon people, admittedly with rubber bullets, but firing on people within 5 minutes of rolling up at a protest, and I think people like Jeff Bezos and, Zuckerberg and whoever, that they feel like, well, yeah, this will happen, but we'll weather it and we'll be okay. And, I think that the problem with that is now you look at the consequences of this, that Trump is just like in Arturo Ui. It's just like in that, my dad used to tell me, he's fundamentally unfit for government. And to do an act like this and then say now's the time for peace. The one thing I really wanted to mention to you was, I think it was a Hezbollah march that I saw on the news years ago. And it showed all the marchers in, waving their flags, and they had their balaclavas and stuff. And I don't know if you know this, Terminal Mode, but sometimes they actually have marches where the militants will literally march with models of suicide bomber vests to symbolize the weaponry. Do you know this occurs sometimes?
I haven't seen any of their marches, no.
Okay. Well, I think it was Hezbollah, but I also saw they had it looked like a kid, like a teenager holding, it was like a model of a bomb. And what was fascinating to me was, I looked at it, I could see that it was like made of metal, like metal cylinders welded together. So it was like a purely symbolic representation of, like a handheld IED. And I was like, wow, so that means that it's ingrained in collective memory enough now in those war zones, that the suicide bombing and that the explosive vest is a tool of weaponry that to them is just as relevant as, missiles are to Kim Jong-il. And so, what worries me is that Iran, they have not been the aggressor. They have not been, creating open warfare. And now we've provoked them, and that they have like a 40+ year history of using the tools of armed, what do you call it? Armed struggle or whatever. But it includes things like suicide bombings. And, that really worries me because people, they think that Hezbollah is like the worst of the worst. But actually Hezbollah was known to deal with the Americans and give them security guarantees for negotiating missions, and that they didn't breach those guarantees, and that they kept their word. And Iran kept their word in the nuclear deal. So instead of seeing them as just this sort of amorphous demonic force, we should look at them as like, I don't agree with their system of government, but they have been a rational actor. And what do you think a rational country with self-determination is going to do when they get attacked like this? I mean, what do you think, Terminal Mode? Like, I don't know what they're going to do next.
Well,
do you think they'll attack American bases or something?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, they've been very restrained in their responses before. It was like when the previous attacks, when they were which it was really gross. They drones struck. I don't remember who it was recently. It was just like in a neighborhood. They drone struck somebody, and there was a couple civilian casualties. The Israelis did, and then the Iranian response was, "We're going to fire these missiles off and have a show of force, and that's going to be it." It was a measured response, and it was just a reaction to kind of say that we've done whatever we're going to do here. In the past, that's what they've been doing. Like, how do they react to this now? Is like, I don't know. I mean, I think they go full bore into some sort of, asymmetrical warfare, funding people. I mean, that's what the Saudis were doing, with the 9/11 hijackers. They just funding these insurgents that we have no way of knowing when and where they're going to strike. And
No, that's exactly right. That's the problem, and it leads to this cycle of intergenerational conflict, which someone on your Discord said recently, that they feel like there is this concept of instrumentalized trauma, that that establishment power structures are willing to sort of encompass the experience of trauma for their citizens as something that can be useful to them, and that means they don't have to do an act of terrorism, but when it occurs, they know how to exploit it. Exactly what you're saying with the PNAC document thing as well, and all those sort of like William Crystal and William Sapphire and Pearl and all Wolfowitz and all the they know it's that sort of Naomi Klein thing of like, well, the crisis happens and then we're going to be there to make the most out of it. I'm just got to switch off my camera to save energy. My phone's about to die. I'm getting onto a charger. But and what worries me is, because it's asymmetrical warfare, the civilian who suffers in an act of asymmetrical warfare in the West, they're going to hate Iran. They're going to hate, whoever's behind it. And we could end up 30 years from now with a society just like what Benjamin Netanyahu has cultivated in Israel, which is a society in fear, a society full of hatred, a society where there's been so much bloodshed unpredictably on both sides that people can't feel trust and safety anymore. And it's like Netanyahu has just opened this void, like the gates of hell, and just welcomed us into it with him. And, like, I don't want to live in a society like that, because I had it one time. John Howard was our prime minister, and he had a lot in common with Benjamin Netanyahu, and he was a cheerleader for getting us into the Iraq war. And they're the sort of people where by the end of it, they want everyone to feel like, see, I knew you're all as bad as I am deep down, and I don't want us to go down this path. And I think that basically Iran can deliver, on that threat in what they see as their own defense, which I'm trying to be fair about. Like, I agree, they've been restrained. They have not been provocative. And yet I think they've got a capability that will, far exceed the suffering that Westerners experienced as a result of the Iraq War.
Yeah, it's a much larger country. I think more technologically advanced. Although, like I'm so disturbed on like so many levels of like what's been going on. The targeting of scientists, seems like evil to me. Like destroying a country's brain trust. If that's acceptable behavior for them to target people in Iran who are working on their national defense programs, be it nuclear or whatever, then pretty much everybody in America is also a target, right? We all know people who are connected to the defense industry, which I raised this question earlier. The idea that some other country can just go in and assassinate, the CEO of Lockheed, is that like a precedent that we want to set? Or not even the CEO, just somebody who works for Lockheed, just anybody, engineers. Is it okay? Is it okay for another country to drone strike engineers who work for Boeing or whoever? It just seems like all sorts of bad precedents. And we always talk about in America, we're just the arbiter of moral goodness, but it's just the way we frame it. We're the ones doing all these terrible things, and then we make it look like some other country is far worse than us. And
and the other thing is, they always used to talk about it in the war on terror, as they used to call it, idiotic title. They talk about dirty bombs, and to bomb a nuclear facility, it's basically, that is a radiological attack on that country, because you're going to create an entire region of radioactive pollution.
Fukushima.
like
I think of Fukushima. When they had the
yeah, like Fukushima. That's a very good comparison. Yeah, exactly. You could create. Who knows what the environmental consequences could be, but it would have been unthinkable in a world before Trump that you have, any willful exposure of the public to radiation like that.
yeah. I'm always. I think that for a long time I've been opposed to bombings, just in general. Like even when they'd say like, remember when I probably said this before when Clinton bombed Bosnia, they bombed a military target, but I think 500 civilians died, and I'm like kind of like of the opinion that anytime you kill an innocent person that you're committing a crime. Like innocent people who are not a party to the goings on in their government should not. It's just wrong to me. Maybe I'm a purist here, but I'm a pacifist, and anytime I see the carelessness as far as these type of things, it bothers me. I think if Trump wanted to take these nuclear sites out, he should have gone in there himself, and he should have led a cadre of people, and they should have gone in by foot. But the idea that you're just blowing up a space is very primitive and very horrific, in my opinion.
And just so crazy that we had a functioning nuclear deal with Iran where they willingly kept their uranium enrichment to 3% or something like 5%, way below weapons grade. And that was just torn up. And that all goes back to Trump being the poster child of just this unreasoning hatred and resentment of Obama, literally because he was a black guy that was president. And that
the whole Tea
Trump
Party
was just
that the whole Tea Party movement was more about a black person running this country than it was being taxes or anything about that. I think you're right.
Definitely.
You also made a really good point there about how the people surrounding Trump, anybody with any sense of moral compunction whatsoever, if you've got a modicum of decency, which most of them don't. If you take a role in the Trump administration, generally it's a sign that you've got no decency. But we had a lot of people who did resign and did have conflicts with Trump, and they got out of the administration. And so as a result, what happened? There's kind of a natural selection going on of shit. He just draws in anybody who's able to stick around with him long enough is the worst of the worst. I think that's a very good point. And Stephen Miller was he was like an aide for the worst. He was an aide for Michelle Bachmann. I don't know if you remember her. She was
God.
He was an aide.
I do remember Michelle Bachmann.
Yeah. And then she
was sort of very much like a Sarah Palin type of character, but I think more aggressive on foreign relations, as I recall.
Yeah. He was her aide, and then he went to work for Jeff Sessions, who basically was a person looking to restrict civil rights for black people. So
yeah, that's right. Sorry, he had this weird thing about cannabis, but he was also definitely notorious. And if you go back in the hearings in the early 90s about Jeff Sessions, when I think Bush the elder tried to appoint him to something, many Republicans came out against him and said, this man is not acceptable because he's just so openly racist and all of the sort of gerrymandering and electoral roll meddling he used to do.
It's unbelievable that Stephen, I've seen a few appearances of Stephen Miller on Fox News and whatnot. It's just unbelievable that this person is normalized. His views are absolutely horrific, and
I can remember back when Young Turks used to have some decent content, and they showed footage of him giving this impassioned and enraged speech at whatever college he went to, I think on the West Coast. And he was saying, basically, word for word, he was saying, why should we have to pick up our own litter and put it in the bin? We should be able to basically just throw it straight down and all the maids should have to clean it up. That was his attitude. He was literally saying it get these lazy cleaners off their backsides to follow us around with a dustpan and broom, so we just only need to exercise our bodily functions, and they'll clean up after us. Like, it was so hideous.
Yeah.
He's an awful person.
Yeah, it's
But it's funny that Trump is also like the same kind of, you know, comes from like the lowest of the bottom dwellers in his political heritage. It's amazing that like Trump Senior had a song about him by Woody Guthrie, about his segregationist housing practices in his project housing in around New York, and that Trump has got this weird connection to McCarthy through the lawyer. I've forgotten his name.
Cohn.
But yeah.
Rick Cohn.
So, yeah, it's just funny how, like, Trump himself is an example of that sort of bottom feeder anti-evolution.
I didn't even think of it that way too. I mean, yeah. So you just have these like I don't know what it is, like Mobius strip of shit that these people are. They just intertwine and just wrap back around each other.
Yeah. Well, look, I've got to take my son out for a bushwalk, but it was good talking to you, and I wish you well, and I hope your next guest has a good time chatting with you. So I'll let you go.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Take care.
Thanks, Terminal Mode. Have a good stream. See ya.
Thanks. Yeah, David. Oh, that's the thing is like somebody was saying that the way that Pakistan got the nuclear weapons was not through research and efforts like the Iranians are doing. That somebody basically just walked in there and said, here's the stuff, and they were able to do it. And that's where we're at now. I mean, the fact that North Korea has them, Pakistan has them, India has them. If there's any justice in the world, I mean, Iran kind of deserves it at this point, because if they had a nuclear weapon, this wouldn't be happening to them. They wouldn't have had this, spectacle. It sucks because I don't support the Supreme Council in Iran. I think the theocracy is bad. I think the people there kind of misogynistic and repressive of women. I don't support the government, but that doesn't mean that we should go in there and use it as an excuse to commit this war crime against them. Somebody was saying, and it just makes sense, that if they were actually pursuing, like they've been accused of, there's that Chris Hedges, where is it, the Chris Hedges article from 1995 in the New York Times about how Iran is not far away from getting a nuclear weapon. So 30 years we've been talking about this, and I think the Iranian people are probably smart enough that if they were really doing it rather than following the international accords and whatnot, that they would have one by now. So the shitty thing is that they were punished for following the rule of law here. I don't know how Iran would be able to strike here in the United States, because they have some difficulty striking within Israel. So I keep talking about asymmetrical warfare, which ends up not even being, it's hard to tell, where it's coming from or whatever, but that's always been what they've been using Hezbollah for, taking the heat off themselves and funding other insurgencies elsewhere. But, that's what we've done for decades. Let's see. Yeah, AB, I think that it sucks too, because I think as far as creating our own worst enemy, it was not a country, even though it was purported by, right-wing Christians here that the country hates us and everybody wants to kill Americans or whatever. That's not who the Iranian people are. And especially in the urban center there, Tehran, they dislike their government, but again, not our job. You think they convinced him of a dirty bomb? That was part of the whole thing with Iraq, right? Well, the thing with Trump is like everything with Trump is something that can't be undone, which is troubling. Like when Trump came into the Republican debate in 2016, and he basically soured the discourse. He started, he was crass. He had no sense of political decorum. It was just all about insults. And after he did that and he succeeded, he basically made it so the discourse, you can never put all that shit back in the box. So what he did to make it so all of these other people are following in his footsteps and doing unhinged stuff and not showing civility and not showing respect, we're never going to get that back. Never. There's just no way to do it. And it's the same thing with whatever marginal goodwill that we had in the Middle East. We're fucked on that. We're never going to be able to fix it. We're never going to be able to get any other country to trust us ever again in that region. And the fact that the European Union opposed this and we went against them, basically we're turning America into a pariah state. Yeah, he's like the person that, like, if you know a gambler, he's like the worst gambler ever. He doesn't ever have any kind of strategy. He doesn't count cards. He just always, will bet as much money as possible and tries to use his position as a means of winning. But there's no strategy there. I don't think we're ever going to get any. The Democrats just, I don't think that they're the solution. I don't see that. It's a really messed up state we're in right now, that we have a group of people who don't follow any rule of law or decorum at all. And that's how they win, is they win by cheating and lying and stealing. And so the fact that we have Democrats that always want to, somebody put it best that when, what was it? This Mike Lee thing that Mike Lee, what did he tweet out? He tweeted out that after the persons in Minnesota got assassinated, let's look this up. He tweeted out something really gross about this thing. Senator celebrating the murdered political opponents should be expelled, not debated, not excused, expelled. He did this gross thing, and they forced Al Franken to resign over a joke photo, but this is like somebody being murdered. The Al Franken thing was him pretending to touch that girl's boobs, who was always in these military events, whatever, the entertaining the troops. I don't know what the term is, whatever. The group of people who goes over there, and she was part of that troop, and she would make sexual jokes with everybody, and she was doing it with Al, but because Roger Stone wanted to get rid of Al, she sided with him, and they got rid of him over the photo of him pretending to touch her boobs. But now this guy, the Republicans do things that are far worse. And you had, was that Paul Gosar showing a video of AOC getting murdered. So how do we on the left counter that? How can you even win against people who cheat and have no sense of shame? We're just screwed. It doesn't get. I just don't see how we can vote or march or improve this, because the Republicans and right-wing people, their behavior is never going to go back to, how it was in the 80s, where they had some sense of civility. You're never going to get like Tip O'Neill or any kind of decent. I've always thought that right-wingers were terrible people, but at least when they kept their when they felt like they had to keep their worst elements private, like their racism and whatnot, like with Reagan and Nixon talking behind the scenes about how black people are monkeys. They used to keep it a secret. Now it's out in the front. So AB says the Dems have been maintaining the systems that have brought the populace to a point where they're desperate enough to vote for strongmen like Trump. Yeah, I see that. They like, there's no, the last election was, do you want Trump or do you want, essentially Kamala Kamala was trying to say that she was a conservative person, gun owner. She was tough on crime and tough on these things. That why would you want the person who's going to be Trump light? So yeah, the primaries is we're trying to do something like that here in Arizona, but I don't know. I'm hoping that this I mean the silver lining on this is that this is going to fracture some of the base. Supposedly like Don Jr. was against this, and he's really smart and charismatic. Tucker was against it, of course. So like if you get enough of that side that kind of calls Trump on his bullshit, that he's not into endless wars, because the next step here is nation building. When they talk about getting rid of the Ayatollah and putting something in there, that's nation building. Yeah, that's right, AB. I like always. I feel it's never a good feeling to have to vote for the candidate that you think barely hits the bar of kind of the progressive policies you'd like to see. So it's always disappointing, but I always do it. I always hold my nose and go in there and vote for the Democrat, thinking that eventually they're going to do something. But anyways, I think I've been rambling on long enough. Maybe I need to work into. I think David said that I was getting a little dark there. So let's make it positive and talk about how the upside of this is if there's no significant retaliatory measures, if it just ends like this, which I don't think it will. I think that there's no way the only thing they did in Iran was create animosity. I'll be surprised. There could be since not a sizable, but there's a lot of people in Iran. All of the modern people, they do not like the clerics. Anybody who is a normal average person that lives there, the only people who like the clerics are the family of the clerics. So there's a small chance that there might be some weird outcome here. But again, you have no person to put in there to lead these people. So what is the light of the tunnel, AB? You got to tell me what the light is, because I mean, I don't know. Anywho, I'm going to wait for AB to tell me what the light at the end of the tunnel is. I think he's typing a lot of stuff out there. This collapse has always been inevitable, but we're gone so far that only through collapse. Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of accelerationism, which is kind of like, there are times when I'm like, maybe these people are right. Maybe we just need to put an end to the American empire. But the thing is that a lot of us have to suffer through that, and like, if you have a kid, like, we brought a kid into the world during Obama's presidency because we thought, oh, things look like they're going up. We had 8 years of Bush, we have Obama here. So I'm like kind of like an anti-natalist. I think that bringing a child into the world without consent is kind of questionable moral behavior. So I was like, do we really want to do this? But I've been with my partner a long time. So we had a kid during the Obama administration. And then to see her suffer like through Trump, I mean, here in Arizona, her reproductive rights were taken away for a while. I mean, she's still young, but the idea that they're taking away rights for, your kid is disheartening. Trump's theme song is "We Are Devo," huh? Maybe if I play it, I'm gonna get demonetized. Not that there's any monetization on the stream, anyways. I would much rather light at the end of the collapse tunnel. Yeah, it feels that way. I don't know. I'm closer to this than most people. That strike that they hit a tower. I kind of knew somebody that was like really close there and could have been basically people that I know could die, through these strikes, and they're not people who are partisan people or political or whatever. They're not people who are there supporting the theocracy. They're just average people who happen to be born in Iran. So it's like, it's tough to see it happen to people AB says, much rather wake up, make changes voluntarily, but history shows us that's very likely. But the history also shows us too that like violent conflict never really resolves anything either. Like sometimes like we do rebuild from the ashes, but look at after World War II, how long did it take for us to fuck shit up again, kind of get back up there? No. David says to say something nice, something clever, but if you can't say something nice, say something clever but devastating. I'm probably not capable of doing that right now. I'm sorry, David. Sorry if I've been a bummer today. But anywho, I might come back on tomorrow if I figure out something clever and something devastating to say. If people want to hang out and talk more, But anywho, thank you all for hanging out with me and comforting me and making me think that even though things look bleak, we got a cool community here of people that I love. I love all of you guys. You guys are a cool hangout, fun hangout. Yeah, maybe. I think that's the thing is like if you look at everything that humans do, we just kind of like we build up something and then we blow it up, and that's just a perpetual cycle. There's never throughout we're like a pretty young species too, but throughout history, it's always been a get really big and then basically collapse on ourselves. So thank you, AB. I'm gonna have to come and play some World of Warcraft with you sometime, since you've always been in here supporting me. I think maybe I'll have to give you some heals or something sometime. So anywho, thanks guys. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow if I'm up to it. If people want to stream or want me to stream or want to hang out, hit me up and pressure me to do it. That's all it takes. Like sometimes I get very despondent and down, and I just need a little motivation kick in the pants. And everybody on Discord, you can always kick me in the pants and say, let's talk about something. So let's do it. And AB, you got to close it out for me because I'm just going to ramble. You're the closer, as I call it. You got to say something rude to me to get me off the stream. Oh, I heard a ding dong. What is that ding dong? Is somebody in the Discord? No. My ding dong was just USB disconnected. Now is the time that I go away. That's right. All right. See you later, everybody. If I can figure out